Today we're going to take a look at the 2022 Honda CRF250F. We'll talk about where this 250cc dirt bike that replaced the CRF230F in 2019 fits in the trail bike lineup, and we'll go over what Honda changed for this year and most importantly its specs and features. Plus we'll start it up and show you what it sounds like and a lot more. But first, if you guys find any info in this video helpful, please take a second and hit the like button. Liking the video and commenting below really helps with growing this channel through YouTube's algorithm, and I really appreciate the help. So first up, where does this bike fit into Honda's current trail bike lineup? Let's quickly run through them. The first thing to keep in mind when looking at Honda's dirt bikes is the last letter after the engine size in their model name, as that tells you what it was designed for. The F models are Honda's regular, run-of-the-mill models that don't have a ton of performance behind them, but with that, they also have the least amount of maintenance you'll need to worry about and cheaper price tags too. And with that being said, let's quickly knock these out and then we'll dive more into the bike you came here for. The first model that starts the lineup off is the CRF250F with an MSRP of $1,649, and then you jump into the CRF110F, which starts the fuel-injected models, but it still has a semi-auto clutch like the 50, and it comes in at $24.99. Then you have the CRF125F, which is where you get into a real clutch at $32.49, and then the big wheel version of that 125 that bumps you up to $36.49. Then the last F model brings us to the bike we're looking at today, and the CRF250F comes in at $47.49. And if you're unlucky enough to live in one of those sticker states, thankfully all of these are green sticker compliant, as is the CRF450X at $97.99, but who knows how much longer that'll last. I want to take a quick second and say thank you to Southern Honda Power Sports for opening their doors to me and allowing me to come pick through their inventory for these videos. They are a massive Honda Power Sports dealer here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, with tons of inventory from new Hondas to used Harleys and everything in between that they sell to people from all over the USA. So check out the link in the description below and head over to their website to see if they can save you some money on your next toy. And now that we've got that out of the way, let's jump into some more info on the CRF250F. Now, do you have any options when buying this bike? Kinda. Technically, you don't have any options to choose from on this bike, but you do have other CRF250 models to choose from, but you end up replacing the F with an R or an RX. And what does that mean? A lot more performance, as Honda classifies them as competition style bikes instead of your run-of-the-mill trail bike, and with that your price almost doubles from the F, coming in at $47.49 all the way up to $80.99 on the R and $84.99 on the RX. So what did Honda change for this year on the 250F? The changes for this year come in the way of graphics and plastics that are now red to match Honda's race bikes. Plus the price went up $50 for this year while everything else remains unchanged. Now let's jump into the chassis and suspension. It has a tough tubular steel twin spar frame, whereas the more expensive R models swap that steel out for aluminum, but that's only part of the reason as to why the F model tips the scales at 265 pounds, whereas the R comes in at 229 pounds. The use of titanium and other high-end materials is just a tiny piece of the puzzle as to why those more performance-based models carry such a hefty price tag. Your seat height comes in at 34.8 inches, and with that you also get 11.3 inches of ground clearance with a pretty short 55.9 inch wheelbase that helps its overall maneuverability. When it comes to suspension, up front you have a non-adjustable 41mm conventional telescopic coil spring fork from Showa that brings in 8.5 inches of travel, and in the rear you have Honda's ProLink system with a Showa shock that offers you preload adjustability and 9 inches of travel. Now when it comes to brakes, thankfully you have discs all the way around, unlike the smaller F models that have a drum in the rear. Up front you have a single 240mm disc with a 2-piston caliper, and in the rear it's stepped down a little with a single piston caliper biting down on a 220mm disc. And those brakes are helping slow down a 21-inch wheel up front that's wrapped with a 80/100 tire, and then out back we have an 18-inch wheel that's wrapped with a 100/100 tire. And speaking of wheels, I really wish Honda would get with the program and black them out like their performance models. What do you guys think? Should Honda throw black wheels on everything or stick with the silver like on this one? And next up, let's get into the engine and drivetrain. It has a counterbalanced 250cc air-cooled 15-degree single-cylinder 4-stroke engine with a single overhead cam and 4-valve setup. This 9.6-to-1 compression engine is pumping out 22.8 horsepower, which is a nice bump from the 230F that was at 19. However, it's a far cry from the R model that almost doubles this bike's horsepower, but again, that's just part of the reason it demands the price tag it does when compared to this bike. It's 2022, so of course it has an electric starter, but sadly it does not have a backup kickstart like the 110F and 125F models. You also have a Keen fuel injection system with a 34mm throttle body helping breathe the life into this engine, and it sips fuel from a 1.6 gallon fuel tank. I do wish it was a tiny bit larger.
That's what she said.
But you'd be surprised just how far you can go on one of these with a gallon of fuel. And helping you put all that horsepower to the ground is a 5-speed transmission with a 13-tooth countershaft sprocket, turning a 520 chain with a 50-tooth sprocket in the rear. As is the case with all CRF models, there isn't much you need to do when it comes to maintaining this drivetrain combo, as you can see here from the maintenance schedule in the owner's manual. And for comparison's sake, here's a quick look at the CRF250R's maintenance schedule as well. Now let's bounce around the bike and touch on a few different things. So what kind of electronics does this bike have? Well, not much. You don't have modes or anything like that to choose from like you do on Honda's race bikes. Everything is a lot more simple. You have a simple keyed ignition that thankfully has a key on indicator light on the left side of the handlebar, right next to the kill switch to remind you the ignition is on, and hopefully that'll stop you from leaving the key on and running your battery down like so many of us do, or maybe it's just me. But if I'm honest, that little light isn't going to do much, but it's better than what we had before, which was nothing. And I always had customers mentioning they'd like something to remind them when they left the key on, since you don't have a headlight shining to remind you the switch was left on. And speaking of headlights, American Honda needs to take a page out of Australia's book, as their CRF250F, which is identical to ours, but it has one key thing we're missing: a headlight. Now call me crazy, but that is something that should be standard when we're talking about trail bikes that are meant for adults. But what do you guys think? Should this bike have a headlight here in America too? Also, next to the key is your low fuel light, since you don't have to worry about flipping over to the reserve anymore with the carburetor. So keep an eye out for that light, otherwise you'll be walking the bike home. Now let's start the bike up and show you what it sounds like, and then we'll come back for a few more things. And that's the 2022 Honda CRF250F. In my opinion, if you're looking for a trail bike that doesn't need a ton of maintenance and won't break the bank while still holding its value pretty well when compared to the competition, this is it. Honda's reliability with their XR models was legendary, and these CRF models are following right along in their footsteps. Is it perfect? No. Could it use some more horsepower and better suspension? Oh yeah. But where do we draw the line when it comes to wanting more and more, but not wanting to pony up and pay for it? As with all of those upgrades comes a hike in price. Case in point, the CRF250R at $8,100 compared to this at $4,800. Now, if you're the kind of guy or girl that wants to power wheelie in almost any gear and send it soaring off 1,000-foot triples, this isn't for you. But if you're just wanting to hit the trails and have fun with something simple, easy to work on, and won't sling you off the back if you grab a handful of throttle, this is a bike you need to look at. But before I ramble on even more, what do you guys think about the CRF250F and the latest round of updates? Also, what do you guys think Honda should change next to really bring this bike to the next level? Personally, I'd love to see Honda take this platform and build a CRF450F too. I think they'd sell like hotcakes if they could keep it priced around the $6,500, maybe $7,000 mark. Some want that extra horsepower and torque a 450 would offer, but they don't want to go all out with the current CRF 450R, RX, and X models that are knocking on 10 grand these days. Would you guys like to see Honda build a CRF 450F? Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below, and I'll be joining in on the conversation too. And on that note, thanks again for watching. I really appreciate the support, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.